Listen closely, my friends. Pressure never knocks before it enters your life. It arrives through one phone call, one piece of bad news, one deadline, one financial problem, or one moment when everything suddenly feels heavier than you can carry. And that is where the real battle begins, not outside you, but inside your mind. When pressure hits, your heart races, your thoughts scatter, and your mind starts creating disasters that haven't even happened. One small spark becomes an entire forest fire inside your imagination. The pressure itself may be real, but the chaos you create around it can be far greater. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not simply by events, but by the judgments we attach to them. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to return to reason when circumstances became difficult. The event may be outside your control. Your response is where your power begins. Think of a mountain standing in the middle of a violent storm. The wind attacks it. Rain crashes against it. Lightning tears through the sky. But the mountain does not panic. It does not chase the storm or beg it to stop. It remains standing. That is the mind you must build. Because calm is easy when everything is going your way. Real strength appears when the deadline is closing. People are pressuring you. Failure is staring at you. And you have every reason to lose control. That moment doesn't create your character. It reveals it. Seneca understood another dangerous truth. We often suffer more in imagination than in reality. Your mind whispers, "What if everything goes wrong?" And suddenly you're fighting battles that haven't even happened. So when pressure comes, don't give it your first reaction. Pause, breathe, separate facts from fear. Control what is yours to control, and refuse to surrender your mind to what isn't. And in this video, we're going through 10 powerful lessons that will teach you how to face pressure without panic, think clearly when everything feels overwhelming, and turn pressure from something that controls you into something you know how to handle. Because the goal is not to live a life without pressure. The goal is to become the kind of person pressure cannot control. Don't panic. Master pressure. Lesson 1. Master the first reaction. The first battle against pressure happens in the first few seconds. Before you solve the problem, before you make the decision, before you speak a single word, your mind will try to give you an immediate answer. Panic, escape, attack, or surrender. That first reaction feels automatic, but it doesn't have to become your final response. A trained mind creates a space between what happens and what it does next. Imagine a ship caught in the middle of a violent ocean. The waves don't ask the captain whether he is ready. They rise, crash against the vessel, and disappear beneath it. A weak captain fights every wave emotionally. A skilled captain watches the compass, adjusts the sails, and keeps moving toward the destination. Pressure is the ocean. Your reaction is the steering wheel. Epictetus expressed this Stoic principle with extraordinary clarity. It is not things that disturb people, but their judgments about things. The bad news is one thing. The meaning you immediately attach to it is another. I'm finished. Everything is ruined. I can't handle this. Those thoughts can turn one difficult event into a psychological prison. This is why your first objective under pressure is not to solve everything. It is to stop making the situation worse inside your own head. Don't answer the angry message while your blood is boiling. Don't make a life-changing decision while fear is screaming. Don't turn one failure into a prophecy about your entire future. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, political betrayal, illness, and uncertainty. Yet he repeatedly returned his attention to what was directly in front of him. That is the discipline. not demanding that reality become comfortable, but becoming mentally strong enough to meet reality as it is. You don't need to control the entire battlefield. You need to control the next move. Think of a diamond. It does not become valuable because pressure disappears. It becomes valuable because enormous pressure transforms what was hidden inside it. Your pressure can do the same to you, but only if you stop treating every difficult moment as evidence that you are broken. The next time pressure hits, give yourself 10 seconds before you react. Breathe slowly. Name what is actually happening. Then ask yourself one question. What is the next move that is within my control? Not tomorrow, not next month, not the worst possible outcome, just the next move. Because panic wants you to see the entire mountain at once. Wisdom asks you to take the next step. And when you master that first reaction, pressure stops being the force that controls your mind and becomes the test that reveals how much control you have built. Lesson 2. Separate the problem from the panic. When pressure enters your life, the first mistake you make is often not the problem itself. It is confusing the problem with the story your mind creates about it. Something goes wrong, and immediately your mind jumps 10 steps ahead. One mistake becomes failure. One failure becomes disaster. One difficult conversation becomes the end of everything. Before reality has finished speaking, your imagination has already written the ending. The Stoics understood that the mind can turn a small wound into a permanent scar simply by repeatedly touching it. An event happens once, but your mind can make you experience it 100 times. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed by our judgments about events, not merely by the events themselves. The power lies in learning to examine the judgment before believing it. Imagine standing in a dark room and seeing a shadow move across the wall. Your body reacts before your mind understands what it is. You assume danger. Your heart accelerates. But then you turn on the light and discover it was only a curtain moving in the wind. The darkness didn't create the monster. Your imagination did. Pressure works the same way. So when something goes wrong, stop saying, "Everything is falling apart." Replace it with something precise. "This specific thing went wrong." Don't say, "I can't handle this." Ask, "What exactly do I need to handle?" Don't say, "My future is ruined." Ask, "What has actually happened and what am I only predicting?" That distinction is incredibly powerful because fear speaks in absolutes. Always, never, everything, nothing. Reality rarely speaks that way. Reality gives you one event, one decision, one obstacle. Panic takes that single event and turns it into an entire identity. Marcus Aurelius practiced looking directly at things without adding unnecessary drama to them. He would reduce situations to their essential reality. That is emotional discipline, seeing the event without decorating it with fear. Think of a surgeon standing in an operating room. The patient may be in danger, the situation may be urgent, and every second may matter. But the surgeon cannot afford to panic with the patient. He must become more precise as the pressure increases. The greater the pressure, the more valuable clarity becomes. You can train yourself the same way. When pressure hits, divide the situation into 3 parts. What happened? What I am imagining? What I can actually do? The first is reality. The second is your interpretation. The third is your power. And this is where you begin taking your mind back. Because pressure wants you emotionally involved in every possible outcome. Wisdom brings you back to the only place where action exists, the present moment. You cannot solve tomorrow's disaster today. You cannot control an outcome that hasn't happened. You cannot fight 10 imaginary battles and still have enough strength for the real one. So stop fighting ghosts. Look at the problem, name it, reduce it, handle what is yours, and let the rest remain where it belongs. Because when you separate the problem from the panic, the problem often becomes smaller, and you become larger than it. Lesson 3. Control your body before you control the situation. When pressure hits, your body often reacts before your mind has time to understand what is happening. Your heartbeat accelerates, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tighten, and suddenly your thoughts begin moving at the same speed as your pulse. This is why trying to think positively while your nervous system is screaming danger often fails. Before you can command your thoughts, you must learn to calm the physical storm carrying them. The Stoics understood the importance of composure. They didn't believe strength meant never feeling fear or tension. Strength meant refusing to let those sensations become your commander. Your body may send you the signal that something is dangerous, but a signal is not always a command. You can feel pressure without becoming pressure. Imagine a rider on a powerful horse during a storm. The horse hears thunder and suddenly wants to run. If the rider panics too, both become uncontrollable. But if the rider becomes still, grips the reins, controls his breathing, and keeps his eyes forward, the animal slowly responds to his composure. Your body is that horse. Your awareness is the rider. This is why your breathing matters under pressure. When you deliberately slow your breathing, create physical stillness, and stop feeding frantic movements, you send your mind a different message. We are not surrendering. You aren't pretending the problem doesn't exist. You're creating enough internal space to respond intelligently. Think about a professional athlete before the final moment of a competition. The crowd is screaming. The clock is running. Everything is moving at maximum speed. Yet the best performers often become strangely quiet inside. Their movements become deliberate. Their attention narrows. Pressure doesn't disappear. They become more precise inside it. That is the skill you need. When pressure rises, don't immediately start talking. Don't pace around the room. Don't fire off messages. Don't make 10 decisions simultaneously. Slow your body down before you speed your mind up. Take one controlled breath. Relax your shoulders. Unclench your jaw. Plant your feet. Look directly at what is happening. Then decide. This may sound simple, but simplicity becomes incredibly powerful when everything around you becomes chaotic. Marcus Aurelius wrote about maintaining tranquility amid disturbance. The point was never to become a stone without emotion. It was to prevent external events from turning the inner world into chaos. A storm can shake the surface of the ocean while the depths remain relatively still. Become like that ocean. Let the surface feel the pressure, but don't allow the deepest part of you to become violent every time life creates a wave. Because the person who can control his breathing, posture, voice, and movements under pressure has already won an important battle. He has created distance between stimulus and reaction, and inside that distance is something incredibly valuable: choice. Pressure wants speed. Wisdom creates space. So the next time everything starts moving too quickly, don't immediately move with it. Slow down. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a crisis is not to move faster, but to become still enough to see clearly. Lesson 4. Stop trying to solve everything at once. Pressure becomes overwhelming when you look at the entire mountain instead of the next step. Your mind sees the deadline, the consequences, the people waiting for an answer, the possibility of failure, and suddenly one problem feels like 10,000 problems. But your mind was never designed to carry tomorrow, next month, and the rest of your life at the same time. The Stoics understood the power of returning to what is immediately in front of you. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly brought himself back to the present task. Do what the moment requires, and do it with excellence. Not everything deserves your attention right now. Some problems belong to tomorrow. Some belong to next week. Some may never happen at all. Imagine a climber standing beneath an enormous mountain. If he stares at the summit for hours, the distance can make him feel powerless. But the mountain is not climbed in one movement. It is conquered through thousands of small steps. He doesn't need to reach the summit today. He only needs to find the next place to put his foot. Your pressure works the same way. Don't ask, how am I going to fix my entire life? Ask, what is the next thing I can do? If you're drowning in work, don't think about the entire workload. Finish the first important task. If you're facing a financial problem, don't panic about your entire future. Identify the first action that improves your position. If you're in conflict with someone, don't rehearse every possible argument. Decide what needs to be said clearly and calmly. If you've failed, don't immediately rebuild your entire identity. Study what happened. Correct what you can. Take the next step. Pressure feeds on complexity. Clarity feeds on reduction. A soldier in battle doesn't need to know how every part of the war will unfold before taking his next position. He needs to understand his objective, read the ground, and make the next intelligent move. Your life may feel like a battlefield sometimes, but panic will never give you a better strategy. This is also why you should stop demanding certainty before taking action. You may never know whether your decision will produce the perfect outcome. You can only make the best decision available with the information you have now. That is enough. Seneca understood that the mind suffers when it constantly lives in imagined futures. You don't need to experience tomorrow's pain today. Don't pay emotional interest on a debt that hasn't come due. When pressure rises, narrow your world. What is happening right now? What actually needs to be done right now? What is within your control right now? Then do that. One breath, one decision, one action, one step, and then another. Because the mountain doesn't become smaller. You become stronger by learning how to climb it. When you stop trying to carry the entire future on your shoulders, pressure loses its ability to paralyze you. Don't conquer everything today. Conquer what is in front of you. Lesson 5. Stop fighting what you cannot control. One of the deepest reasons pressure destroys people is that they waste their strength fighting things that were never theirs to command. You want people to understand you. You want circumstances to cooperate. You want the outcome to match the effort you gave. And when reality refuses, you don't just face the problem, you begin fighting reality itself. That second battle is where much of your suffering begins. Epictetus built an entire philosophy around one brutal distinction. Some things are within your control, and some things are not. Your judgment, your choices, your effort, your discipline, your response, these belong to you. Other people's opinions, the past, unexpected events, and the final outcome do not. Confuse these two worlds, and pressure becomes unbearable. Imagine standing on the shore trying to command the ocean to stop producing waves. You can scream at it. You can become angry. You can demand calm. But the ocean doesn't care. The waves will continue. The wise sailor doesn't waste his strength arguing with the sea. He adjusts the sails, studies the current, and changes his course. That is how you should approach pressure. You cannot control whether someone disappoints you, but you can control what you do next. You cannot control whether an opportunity disappears, but you can control whether you prepare for the next one. You cannot control whether people criticize you, but you can control whether their words destroy your concentration. You cannot control the outcome completely, but you can control the quality of the person you bring into the outcome. This distinction becomes especially powerful during uncertainty. When you don't know what will happen, your mind desperately tries to predict everything. It creates scenarios, calculates possibilities, rehearses disasters. You think you're preparing yourself, but often you're simply exhausting yourself before reality has even arrived. Marcus Aurelius faced an empire filled with events he couldn't personally control. His power came from repeatedly returning to the only territory that truly belonged to him, his own mind and conduct. Think about a tree during a violent storm. A rigid branch can snap because it refuses to move. A flexible branch bends with the wind and survives. Flexibility is not weakness. It is controlled adaptation. You need that kind of flexibility under pressure. If the plan changes, adapt. If someone leaves, continue. If the opportunity disappears, create another path. If the situation becomes harder, become more precise. Don't waste your energy asking, "Why isn't life going the way I wanted?" Ask, "Given that this is reality, what can I do now?" That question turns helplessness into action, and this is where Stoicism becomes more than philosophy. It becomes a survival skill, because when you stop demanding that reality obey your preferences, you recover enormous amounts of mental energy. You stop trying to control the storm. You learn to steer through it. And once you understand that difference, pressure loses one of its greatest weapons, because you don't need the world to cooperate with you to remain composed. You only need to remain in command of yourself. Lesson 6. Turn pressure into focus. Most people think pressure takes their focus away. The truth is, pressure reveals whether you ever learned how to focus in the first place. When everything becomes urgent, your attention starts jumping from one fear to another. You check your phone, replay conversations, imagine consequences, think about what could go wrong, and by the end, you've spent all your energy thinking about the problem without actually moving it forward. The Stoic mind does something different. It narrows the battlefield. Instead of allowing every possibility to enter, it asks one ruthless question: what deserves my attention right now? That question can transform chaos into clarity, because pressure becomes dangerous when everything feels equally important. Imagine a warrior standing in the middle of a battlefield. Hundreds of sounds surround him, shouting soldiers, horses, weapons, chaos. If he tries to respond to everything at once, he becomes useless. But a trained warrior narrows his attention to the target directly in front of him. He doesn't need silence to focus. He needs discipline strong enough to ignore the noise. Your life is the same battlefield. The notification can wait. The opinion can wait. The argument can wait. The hypothetical disaster can wait. The next important action cannot. Marcus Aurelius understood that attention was a form of power. When your mind is constantly scattered, you become easy to control. Every notification can interrupt you. Every criticism can redirect you. Every fear can steal your attention. Eventually, you are not living according to your priorities. You are reacting to whatever screams the loudest. That is why pressure requires radical simplicity. When the situation becomes chaotic, reduce your world to 3 questions. What matters most? What can I control? What must I do next? Everything else is background noise until its turn arrives. Think about a laser. Ordinary light spreads in countless directions, but a laser concentrates its energy into a narrow beam. The power doesn't come from having more energy. It comes from concentrating the energy you already have. Your mind works the same way. You don't necessarily need more motivation. You don't necessarily need more time. You need less mental leakage. Stop spending 10 minutes imagining what someone might think of you. Use those 10 minutes to solve the problem. Stop rehearsing every possible failure. Prepare for the most realistic one. Stop checking for reassurance every 5 minutes. Trust yourself enough to finish the task. And understand this: focus under pressure does not mean becoming emotionally numb. It means refusing to let emotion hijack your attention. You can feel fear and still focus. You can feel uncertainty and still act. You can feel overwhelmed and still choose one thing to do next. That is real composure. A surgeon doesn't become calm because the operation is unimportant. He becomes calm because the situation is too important to allow panic to control his hands. Your pressure deserves the same discipline. When everything around you becomes louder, you must become quieter inside. When everyone starts reacting, you start observing. When everyone starts rushing, you start deciding. And when your mind tells you to solve everything immediately, remember, you don't need to control the entire storm. You only need to keep your hands on the wheel. Because pressure becomes power when you stop allowing it to scatter your attention and start using it to sharpen your focus. Lesson 7. Stop letting pressure attack your identity. Pressure becomes far more dangerous when you stop saying, "I'm facing a difficult situation," and start saying, "I am a weak person." The first statement describes a circumstance. The second turns the circumstance into an identity. And once you believe the problem is who you are, every new challenge becomes evidence against you. Failure happens, rejection happens, plans collapse, people disappoint you. Sometimes you make the wrong decision despite your best intentions, but none of these events have the authority to define your entire character unless you give them that authority. Imagine a tree standing through 4 seasons. Winter strips away its leaves. From a distance it can look dead, bare branches, frozen ground, no signs of life. But beneath the surface, the roots are still working. The tree doesn't confuse the season with its identity. Winter is something it is experiencing, not something it has become. You need to think about yourself the same way. You are having a difficult season. You are not a difficult season. You are experiencing pressure. You are not pressure. You are experiencing failure. You are not failure. This distinction sounds simple, but psychologically, it can change everything. Because once your identity becomes attached to your circumstances, pressure doesn't just threaten your plans, it threatens your sense of self. And when people feel their identity is under attack, they panic, become defensive, blame others, or make desperate decisions. The Stoics approach character differently. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to the question of what kind of person he would choose to be, regardless of what circumstances surrounded him. His environment could change. His responsibilities could change. His enemies could change. But his commitment to virtue remained his responsibility. That is the mindset you need under pressure. Don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Ask, "Who am I going to be while this is happening?" That question is powerful because it moves your attention away from helplessness and back toward character. If someone insults you, who will you become? If your plan fails, who will you become? If everyone around you panics, who will you become? If nobody believes in you, who will you become? Pressure is not only testing what you can handle, it is asking you to choose who you will be while handling it. Think of a sword being forged. Fire surrounds it. Hammer strikes it again and again. The metal is heated, beaten, folded, and reshaped. If the sword could speak, it might call the process destruction, but the blacksmith knows better. The pressure is not necessarily destroying the material. It is giving the material its form. Your difficult moments can do the same, but only if you stop asking, "How do I escape this?" and start asking, "How can I become stronger through this?" That doesn't mean romanticizing suffering. Pain is still pain. Pressure is still pressure. But you can refuse to let difficulty become meaningless. Let pressure teach you patience. Let uncertainty teach you courage. Let responsibility teach you discipline. Let failure teach you humility. Let chaos teach you composure. And when your mind whispers, "Maybe I'm not strong enough for this," don't argue with it emotionally. Prove otherwise through your next action. Because confidence is not always something you feel before the challenge. Sometimes confidence is something you build after repeatedly surviving challenges you once thought would destroy you. So when pressure comes again, remember, you are not the storm. You are the person learning how to stand inside it. And once your identity becomes stronger than your circumstances, pressure can shake your environment without shaking the foundation of who you are. Lesson 8. Master the pressure of other people's expectations. Some pressure doesn't come from the situation at all. It comes from people. The need to impress them, satisfy them, prove yourself to them, make them proud, avoid disappointing them, or maintain an image you created years ago. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop living your own life and start performing a version of yourself that other people will approve of. Think about an actor standing on a stage in front of thousands of people. If he constantly watches the audience while performing, he will forget his lines, lose his rhythm, and become controlled by every reaction in the room. The audience doesn't need to touch him to control him. His attention is enough. That's exactly what happens when you become addicted to other people's opinions. The Stoics understood that reputation is one of the most unstable things a human being can chase. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the opinions of others are outside his control. Someone can praise you today and criticize you tomorrow. Someone can admire your strength and later misunderstand your intentions. If your peace depends on their approval, they become the owner of your peace. And this becomes especially dangerous under pressure. You hesitate because you're afraid people will judge you. You accept things you don't want because you're afraid of disappointing someone. You stay in places that destroy your peace because you're afraid of what people will say when you leave. You hide your ambitions because failure would be embarrassing. You pretend to be fine because admitting you're struggling might change how people see you, and eventually you become exhausted from protecting an image that was never your true self. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from understanding what belongs to you and what doesn't. Other people's judgments belong to them. Your character belongs to you. Their approval is their choice. Your integrity is your responsibility. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Every stone has a name. What will they think? What if they laugh? What if they don't approve? What if I disappoint them? You carry these stones everywhere, wondering why life feels heavier than it should. Then one day you realize something terrifying. You were carrying weights that nobody asked you to carry. So learn to separate respect from approval. You should care about being a good person. You should care about keeping your word. You should care about treating people with dignity, but you don't need everyone to understand your choices. You don't need everyone to agree with your direction. You don't need everyone to applaud your growth. A tree doesn't ask the forest for permission to grow. It simply grows. This is not an excuse to become arrogant or selfish. Stoicism doesn't tell you to ignore all criticism. Wise criticism can reveal your blind spots. The lesson is to examine criticism without becoming enslaved by it. Listen to the truth, discard the noise. When pressure from people becomes overwhelming, ask yourself, if nobody could see this decision, what would I choose? That question exposes how much of your life is driven by genuine values and how much is driven by performance. Because there is a difference between living with principles and living for applause. And once you stop needing applause, something changes inside you. You become calmer, you speak more honestly, you make decisions faster. You stop explaining yourself to everyone. You can disappoint people without betraying yourself. And most importantly, you can stand alone without feeling abandoned. The strongest mind isn't the one that makes everyone happy. It is the one that can remain respectful, disciplined and grounded, even when nobody is clapping. Because when you stop allowing other people's expectations to control you, pressure loses another weapon. You stop performing for the world and finally start mastering yourself. Lesson 9. Turn pressure into power. Most people spend their lives trying to escape pressure. They want an easier schedule, fewer responsibilities, fewer problems, fewer difficult people, fewer moments of uncertainty. But if you remove every source of pressure from a person's life, you don't necessarily create strength. Sometimes you simply create fragility. A muscle that is never challenged has no reason to become stronger. The Stoics understood this differently. They didn't ask, how can I make life stop testing me? They asked, how can I become stronger because life is testing me? That is a completely different philosophy. Instead of seeing adversity as an interruption to your life, you begin seeing it as material from which your character can be built. Think about a blacksmith standing beside a furnace. A piece of metal enters cold, hard and unfinished. Then the heat surrounds it. The hammer strikes it again and again. To an observer, it looks like destruction. But the blacksmith sees something else. Every strike is shaping the metal into what it could not become while it remained untouched. Pressure can do the same to you. The difficult responsibility can build discipline. The uncertain future can build courage. The failure can build humility. The criticism can build emotional control. The crisis can reveal capabilities you never knew existed. But there is one condition. You must stop asking pressure to leave before it has taught you what it came to teach you. Marcus Aurelius wrote about turning obstacles into opportunities for action. That is one of the deepest Stoic ideas. The obstacle isn't always separate from the path. Sometimes the obstacle becomes the path. The thing you wish had never happened may become the experience that makes you wiser. The rejection may force you to build yourself without approval. The failure may expose weaknesses you needed to confront. The pressure may reveal that you were capable of far more than your comfortable life ever demanded from you. This doesn't mean every painful event is secretly good. Some things are genuinely tragic. Stoicism doesn't require you to pretend otherwise. It asks something harder. Even when the event is painful, what will you choose to do with what remains? That question separates resilience from denial. Imagine two people walking through the same storm. One spends the entire journey screaming at the rain. The other accepts that the rain is falling, protects what can be protected, adjusts his route, and keeps walking. The storm is the same, but the person who adapts suffers less unnecessary damage. That is the mindset you need. When pressure rises, don't immediately ask, "Why me?" Ask, "What is this demanding that I become?" Does it demand more patience, more discipline, more courage, better boundaries, better preparation, greater emotional control, then develop it. Because pressure is not automatically your enemy. Untrained pressure is your enemy. A trained mind can use the same pressure that breaks another person as fuel for growth. And this is where the title of this entire lesson becomes real. Don't panic. Master pressure. Don't become the person who needs life to be easy before he can be strong. Become the person who can walk into difficulty and say, "This is hard, but I can handle hard." Because eventually, life will test everyone. The question is not whether pressure will come. It will. The question is who you will be when it arrives. Will you become the storm, or will you become the person who can stand inside the storm without losing himself? Master pressure, and pressure becomes one of the forces that builds you. Lesson 10. Master the moment when everything breaks. There is a moment under pressure when your mind wants to escape the present. It starts running toward tomorrow, imagining consequences, replaying yesterday, searching desperately for an answer that does not exist yet. But the more your mind leaves the present, the less power you have over the situation standing directly in front of you. The final level of composure is learning to remain completely present when everything around you is trying to pull you into panic. A Roman soldier entering battle could not control the weather, the enemy, or what would happen an hour later, but he could control his formation, his weapon, his breathing, and his next movement. That is the philosophy you need when life becomes chaotic. Stop trying to solve the entire future while standing inside the present. Deal with what is actually in front of you. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly returned to the present task. He understood that the mind becomes exhausted when it constantly travels between what has already happened and what might happen next. The past has already taken its payment. The future has not yet arrived. Your only territory is this moment, and if you can remain fully present here, pressure loses much of its psychological power. Think of a surgeon performing a complicated operation. The room is tense. The consequences are enormous. One mistake could matter, yet the surgeon cannot afford to emotionally experience every possible outcome at once. He focuses on the next precise movement. Pressure demands precision, not panic. The greater the stakes, the more important it becomes to narrow your attention to what you can actually influence. This is why when everything starts going wrong, you should make your world smaller. Don't ask, "How am I going to survive all of this?" Ask, "What is the next right thing?" Then do it. After that, ask again. One decision, one action, one breath, one step. You don't need to see the entire road to move forward on the next piece of it. There is also a deeper lesson here. You must stop expecting yourself to feel calm before you act calmly. Sometimes your heart will be racing. Sometimes fear will be screaming. Sometimes uncertainty will sit heavily in your chest. That doesn't mean you've lost control. Self-mastery is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to choose your behavior while emotion is present. A mountain does not become powerful because storms stop reaching it. It becomes powerful because the storms fail to move its foundation. Your goal is not to create a life where nothing shakes you. Your goal is to build something inside yourself that cannot be easily moved by every external event. So when the pressure becomes unbearable, don't demand that yourself becomes superhuman. Return to the basics. Slow your breathing. Separate facts from assumptions. Identify what belongs to you. Remove unnecessary noise. Choose the next action, and then repeat. Because eventually, there will be moments when you cannot change the situation. You cannot stop the storm. You cannot reverse the loss. You cannot control another person's decision. But you can still decide who you will be while standing inside it. And that is where true Stoic strength begins. Not when life becomes easy, not when fear disappears, not when every problem is solved, but when everything around you becomes uncertain and you remain disciplined enough to stay yourself. That is how you master pressure. You don't defeat the storm by becoming louder than it. You defeat it by becoming steadier than it. Pressure will come back. It always does. Another difficult conversation, another unexpected loss, another deadline, another moment when life suddenly becomes heavier than you expected. You cannot build a life where pressure never appears, but you can build a mind that no longer collapses every time it does. That is the real goal of these 10 lessons. You learn that your first reaction does not have to become your final decision. You learn to separate the actual problem from the fear surrounding it, because imagination can turn one obstacle into an entire disaster. You learn to calm your body before trying to control your thoughts, and to stop carrying the entire future when only one step is required right now. You learn to focus on what belongs to you and release what doesn't. You learn that pressure becomes heavier when you fight reality itself. You learn to protect your attention when everything around you is demanding it, and to remember that one focused mind can accomplish more than 1,000 scattered thoughts. You learn not to let difficult circumstances become your identity. A bad chapter is not a bad life. A failure is not your identity. A difficult season is not who you are. Pressure can test you without defining you, and adversity can shape your character without becoming your character. You learn to stop living under the weight of everyone's expectations. You don't need everyone to understand your decisions. You don't need everyone's approval to move forward. And you certainly don't need applause to know that you're becoming stronger. Most importantly, you learn to change your relationship with pressure itself. Instead of asking, "How can I escape this?" ask, "What can this moment teach me?" Instead of seeing every obstacle as an enemy, see it as a training ground. The furnace doesn't ask the metal whether it's ready. The pressure simply comes, and what emerges depends on what the material is capable of becoming. So the next time your heart starts racing, don't immediately panic. Pause. Breathe. Look at the facts. Separate fear from reality. Find what you can control. Choose the next right action. Then move, because you don't need to be fearless to be strong. You don't need to feel calm to act calmly. You don't need to control the storm to control yourself inside it. The world will continue to create pressure. People will disappoint you. Plans will fail. The future will remain uncertain. But there is one thing you can keep building regardless of what happens outside you: your ability to remain in command of yourself. A mountain doesn't become strong because the storm stops. A diamond doesn't become valuable because pressure disappears. And you don't become powerful because life becomes easy. You become powerful because life becomes difficult, and you refuse to become weaker with it. So remember these words when your next storm arrives. Don't panic. Don't surrender your mind. Don't let pressure make your decisions for you. Stand still long enough to think. Think clearly enough to choose. Choose wisely enough to act. And act with enough discipline to keep moving. Because pressure is coming, the only question is, will it break you or will it build you? Don't panic. Master pressure.